Hey everyone, welcome to part 2 of my Ivysaur guide. The last episode focused on how to win neutral when neither player has an advantage, so today I'll go through the 4 types of positional advantages that Ivysaur can have over an opponent, and how to turn those advantages into an opening. The 4 types of advantages I'll cover in this video are having an opponent in the corner, having an opponent in shield, having an opponent above you in the air, and having an opponent on a platform above you. Pretty much everything I'm going to cover in this video, and the rest of this series, will build on the concepts I established in part 1, so if you haven't watched that episode yet, I highly recommend that you do so before we dig further into the same ideas in this episode. All that said, let's get right into the first kind of advantage you can hold, which is having your opponent in the corner. When you have stage control and your opponent is in the corner, their options are naturally more limited than they otherwise would be, because they now have less room to maneuver. This, combined with the pressure of knowing that any hit on our end could lead to them being sent off stage and potentially edge-guarded, means that the other player will generally be looking to get out of the corner if at all possible, either by attacking or moving around you. This means that our job is to keep them in the corner by controlling the space we already have, and punish their eventual attempts to reclaim more space on the stage by pressing forward. From this position, Ivy is great at either continuing to push opponents towards the ledge or stopping them from moving back towards center stage. Specifically, she has a few tools that are extremely useful for serving different purposes, depending on what you want to do. If your goal is to wall out opponents that are attempting to move closer to or around you, you can use any one of her long-ranged moves like back air, forward tilt, or down tilt, which will stuff any attempts to attack Ivy directly. But if you use them too preemptively, your opponents can capitalize on your commitment to punish you, or to reclaim center stage. You can also keep your opponent off guard with an approach of your own. Dash attack serves as a quick burst option that is difficult to avoid when an opponent is cornered. Dash attack is just as committal as any of these other moves, but it serves an opposite function. If your opponent is waiting in the corner for you to throw out a walling move from further away that they would be safe against by simply continuing to wait, dash attack will also catch them off guard. Finally, if your opponent is comfortable waiting in the corner and you want to force them to take some kind of action, you can throw a Razor Leaf. Razor Leaf, like any projectile, requires some kind of response from your opponent if they want to avoid being caught in it and have it potentially lead into a bigger opening for you. That means that they may try to put out an attack, they may shield, or they may try to move around it. These are all options that Ivysaur can punish. I'm about to cover what we can do against a shielding opponent in the next section of the video, but if they try to put out an attack or move around the leaf, now they're either giving us even more stage control, they move backwards, putting themselves into a range that Ivy can hit them with her disjointed moves, or committing themselves to an animation that we can punish by trying to clank the Razor Leaf. Taken together, these 3 types of approaches allow Ivysaur to do a good job of keeping opponents in the corner and punishing them for trying to get out. However, the one caveat to all this is that you need to respect it if your opponent has a strong ledge game. If an opponent has a good ledge dash or other way to get on stage with a lot of intangibility, then they can simply retreat to ledge and then reclaim some portion of the stage safely, which means that we need to respect whatever space it is that they can safely cover from the ledge. This varies a lot by character as well as by player habits and skill level, but is absolutely something that you need to keep in mind when you're applying corner pressure. The second kind of situation that you can take advantage of is when your opponent is in shield. If you need a refresher on how shield mechanics work in PM, I recommend checking out the article linked in the description of this video, which covers all of the concepts necessary to understand this section. In general, being in shield means that your opponent's options are limited. They can either use a laggy defensive option like a roll, they can grab, use an aerial or special move after jumping, or they can wave dash out of shield. This means that you can relatively easily identify their goals and take advantage of how your opponent tries to achieve them. In general, Ivy's moves are not great on shield, meaning that hitting someone's shield directly will typically get you punished or give them a chance to escape the disadvantaged situation that they had previously been in. Because of this, many players consider run-up shield, or shielding in general, to be a strong strategy against Ivysaur. However, we do have one move that's good on shield. Neutral air is 0 on block, thanks to the fact that it has a landing hitbox, which allows us to land with a reasonable degree of safety against someone shielding, and then evaluate our options from there. If we nail on someone's shield and then attack them again, they can hold shield and punish the second attack most of the time. The only scenario where this is not the case is against characters with a poor out of shield option behind them, if we do something like cross up their shield with Nair. However, Ivysaur can punish attempts to act out of shield immediately after her Nair quite well, with her fast jab or dash attack, and if opponents hold shield, anticipating an unsafe attack like dash attack, then she can take the opportunity to grab them. Because of how fast dash attack and Nair are, Ivy is also great at waiting next to an opponent's shield and punishing attempts to get out of shield, like so. This basic mix-up between attacking, grabbing, and waiting comprises most of how Ivy can make the most of her advantage against a shielding opponent. Without any form of true pressure, or even a normal speed grab, your goal should be to mix them up and attempt to find what your opponent likes to do to get out of shield, and then punish that. This will naturally change for every character, as some, like Spaces, you need to respect much more than others because they have threatening and relatively safe out of shield options that are difficult to punish without a specific callout or prediction.
The other two types of advantage states that you'll see pretty often come when you have your opponent above you.
The first of these two is when we can attempt to juggle someone. When someone is in the air, you have a number of advantages that you can abuse against them. The first and most obvious is that your opponent has a limited number of resources that they can use to change their position relative to yours, while you're free to move as you like on the ground without running out of jumps or anything like that. Second, because their fall speed will make them land at some point, if your opponent is above you, then they will need to get through or around you in order to touch the ground and refresh their resources, like their ability to double jump or air dodge. Finally, Ivysaur is able to control a great deal of space in the air, both directly, using her seed bomb to cover an arc of space above her and large hitboxes such as back air and up B, and indirectly, thanks to her ability to control her aerial drift much better than most of the cast. In general, your goal is to use the passive threat of Ivysaur's big hitboxes, as well as seed bomb, to try to lock down where your opponent can move in the air as they come down, which helps you to know where they'll be. Once you know that, you can do one of two things. If you feel confident that you have a read on where your opponent will be, you can try to hit them directly, and if you're correct, then after that, you can often net an edgeguard or even a stock. I have a full tutorial on the importance of threatening these moves and how to juggle with Ivy that I recommend watching for more detailed explanations, which I will link in the description of this video. Now, because Ivy's aerials and specials are often associated with having long range but being slow on startup, opponents will often try to come down with an aerial that would hit us as we attempt to stop them from landing. If we anticipate this, instead of challenging their move directly, we can follow beneath them as they come down, wait just outside their range, and punish that landing with a grab, down tilt, dash attack, or move of your choice. Ideally, you'll want to mix up between taking these two approaches to juggle your opponent, since attacking them makes them more likely to burn valuable resources or do something committal that you can punish by waiting, and with punishing their attempts to land, makes them less likely to use those committal options, which in turn makes them easier to swat out of the air. To an extent, you can combine the concepts that we just discussed for juggling and dealing with a shielding opponent to handle our fourth type of advantage, which is having someone above you on a platform. However, now your opponent is on the ground, which means that they have access to their shield, crouch canceling, their grounded moveset, and more movement options that can make them harder to pin down. In addition, shielding is even more potent defensively on platforms than on the ground, thanks to the ability to shield drop. However, at the end of the day, our opponent's goals are the same, to safely get back to the bottom level of the stage, and to either hit you in the process or at least reset back to neutral. And this means that your goals are also pretty much the same, to stop or punish their attempts to do that. Just like with the last types of advantage, you can narrow down your opponent's option to come down, and then evaluate from there how you want to respond. Most opponents will come down by either jumping off a platform, wave dashing off, or dropping through it, and then they'll use a character-specific option, like an aerial or special move to cover their landing, or they'll use movement to reset the situation upon landing so they can return to neutral. Just like when you're covering an opponent who's on the air with no platform, you have two main options. You can either hit them while they're still above you, or you can attempt to punish them as they come down. However, the prevalence of shield dropping makes this more difficult than it may sound. Missing or mistiming an attack doesn't just mean that you're giving up a juggling opportunity, it may mean that you're now being punished by a shield drop aerial. So the main difference between how you approach someone in the air or shielding versus someone on a platform should be how you play around the shielding and the shield drop. When you try to punish someone for how they land, you could place a down tilt at the range where your opponent would shield drop into it, or you could short hop and put out a long-lasting aerial like Nair beneath their shield so that if they shield drop they'd be caught by it. In general, the main thing to keep in mind is that being on a platform may be a much stronger situation than being in the air was, but at the end of the day, their options are still more limited than yours until they can find a way back down onto the bottom end of the stage. And as long as you don't give them the opportunity to do that easily, then you can take advantage of the situation. That's all for this section of my Ivysaur guide. So far, we've covered a brief overview of how to approach neutral and the situations where Ivysaur has an advantage. So next up, we're going to talk about how to turn the openings we get off these advantage into stocks. Parts 3 and 4 will cover how to approach punish game and edge guarding as an Ivysaur player. Please feel free to leave questions in the comments and I'd be happy to answer them or talk further, and you can find a link to the Ivysaur Discord as well in the description of this video. Stay tuned for part 3 of the guide coming soon, and thanks for watching.